I have good news for you. Good news is I have a very short presentation because I have a very simple message to deliver. But what I hope for is that we can then spend some time having me answer your questions. So, and what I hope for also is that what I say will disturb you a little bit, make you a little bit uncomfortable. And as I say this, and as I give my message to you, I want you to know that in my heart, the message I'm giving you is for Brazil, because I love Brazil. And by the way, my wife does too. And before I get in any more trouble, will you please give my wife a round of applause? Please stand up, Maya. Thank you. She appreciates that, and so do I. I'm wondering how many of you know what the word badge means when I talk about it in educational terms. How many of you know what badges, educational badges are? Nobody. Let me tell you, though, that before I get started, I got to say that when Maya and I came here 3 days ago, after 13 years, we were here 13 years ago when this building was dedicated. And Maya has a plaque outside on a tree commemorating that date in 2005. When we came here 13 years later, it felt like coming home. Because we came to our friends, Sergio, Maria Luisa, our friends from FJB, many of whom have been to our house during the summer when the FJB MBAs come to visit us. FJB and UCI have a long partnership. We started with we started probably the first international online partnership in about 10 years ago in project management, where we offered our project management online courses to FJB, and they translated them into Portuguese, and are offering now, continue to offer those courses through their platforms. I also was involved, hopefully in some way, in having FJB be the first institution to offer open courses in Brazil. I think we did that about 10 years ago with Stavros. And so we have a long history of partnerships. In fact, I think our partnership with the MBA program goes back 20 years as well. So we're celebrating several 20-year anniversaries. In any event, we have a long history with Brazil and with between UCI and Strong and FJB. And excuse me a little, I'm having a little trouble with my voice, so I'm going to take a drink of water every once in a while. My message is to talk to you about alternative digital credentials or badges. Not very many of you have heard about the word badge or how it's used in higher education, but I'm going to tell you right now that it's going to be very important in higher education. In fact, it's a higher education imperative. And those institutions, my simple message is that those institutions that don't understand badges and get involved in badges are going to fall behind. My message is that Brazilian institutions do not understand badges and get involved in them, Brazilian higher education is going to fall behind the rest of the world. Now, this may seem like I'm thinking about the future too much. It may seem like I'm being more serious than I should be, but in fact, I'm saying the same thing to my institution. My institution at UCI has to get on badges just as much as does Brazil. What is a badge? Here you see a University of California badge certifying that this student knows something about HTML, CSS. Now, I don't even know what that means. But those of you in IT know what it means, and the employers who employ people know what this means. You can see that it was issued by UCI. When you click on this digital badge, you get this information. The badge was awarded to students who learned the basics it says also that students have an understanding of mobile response practices, media queries, and deployment of web applications. That means something to employers. I'll try to describe to you a badge in a few more terms also. These are digital badges that when issued to you, you can put it on your LinkedIn account, on your Facebook account, on your personal resume. It's a digital representation of what you've learned, testified by an institution like UCI or FJB or Strong. It's portable, it's useful. It's something that can be applied right now in the marketplace for jobs. It's transferable. That is, you can transfer it from one location to another. And by the way, it's very secure. Right now, it's pretty secure, but in the future, very shortly, it's going to be based on blockchain technology, which, as you know, is very secure. Okay? It's easily understood. There's a lot of text, and clearly understood. It attests to competencies, not just I took a course. No, I took a course and I know how to do something, how to program in HTML, for instance. And finally, it's distributable over digital networks. So it can be distributed digitally and very easily over networks. When I said that the badge has a current and instant relevance. Oops, what have I done? Okay, thought that was required. You can see in the red arrow, this is a front-end developer this is a job ad for a front-end developer in California. You can see HTML, CSS is listed there on the bottom as skills that are needed. Now think about this. If I'm that employer, I put out an ad and I hope people will respond who have that skill. Suppose I don't want to do that. Suppose I want to find people like this. If it's digitized, I can go into LinkedIn, I can go into Facebook, I can find somebody with those skills that has a digital badge, because my digital reference, my digital search engine will find that person for me. And I will be able to contact that person and ask them if they want a job with me, because they have the skills I need. Okay, so digitization means something very important in the hiring business. And more firms are going to be streamlining their hiring by looking for people that have exactly the combination of skills they need. I'm just going to show you a few other badges. They take a lot of forms. Here's Northeastern University, the Open University of the UK, Georgetown University. IBM has a whole series of badges now. And they have very, very big success in issuing these badges. These badges are being recognized by employers now all over the world. Here's some more badges, including the AICPA, which is the Certified Public Accounting Association in the United States. And the IBM Digital Badge Program has, for instance, created a huge Nimbus cloud around all kinds of skills and abilities that they now can. They're now integrating with their client base, with their supplier base. Everything is going on partly because of these badges. I'm going to use this headline for a number of reasons. Brazilian institutions must adopt ADCs or they will fall behind the US. I'm going to use that headline and tell you why I think that's true. First, ADCs are already widely used. I talked about IBM, Penn State, Illinois State. All of these institutions are now issuing badges. So they're already happening. So although Brazilian institutions, if you haven't done it already, you're late, but not too late. but you should be moving quickly into thinking about badges. By the way, because I was noting to you that the badges relate directly to current skills that are needed in the workplace, this has a reverse effect by having institutions focus on those skills that are needed in the workplace. And so we have a double effect. One effect is we're giving our students something that gives them competitive advantage. On the other hand, we are refocusing our own programs on those exact skills. Brazilians must adopt badges because traditional transcripts don't tell employers a thing. The only thing a traditional transcript tells an employer usually is that somebody graduated from college, which is great. We all want college graduates. But then if you go and look at a transcript, and this is an actual transcript of UCI, there is no way that an employer can find out what this person actually knows. What does Intro to Artificial Intelligence mean? This student passed Introduction to Artificial Intelligence with looks like a B+. What does that mean? Does it tell you anything about what that person knows? Probably not if you're an employer. But if we had a badge in that course that said, I know how to decode a cyber attack or something like that, that would tell you something that was very important as an employer. Brazilians, you must adopt badges because universities are being held more accountable. Part of the social contract between universities and society is that they're providing value not only to individuals but to the general economy. In the United States, we have a lot of accountability issues because the price of higher education has gone up. It's less affordable. People want to know more about what the return on that investment is going to be. We're going to spend $60,000 a year on a degree. What's it going to get me? It better get me a pretty good job, a pretty good career, or it's going to be a big waste of money. So universities are beginning to be held accountable for what happens to graduates after they graduate. They can't get jobs. That's a real problem for a university. And so we need to get our students competitive in the marketplace in both technical and in personal skills. Must adopt badges because young adults are seeking shorter and more relevant learning. The millennial population, at least in the United States, is clearly looking for instant gratification. We've had to shorten, in continuing education, we've had to shorten our courses from 10 weeks down to 5 weeks, simply because people are not wanting to commit to 10 weeks at a time. And that's the case throughout the world as I know it. Everybody is shortening their courses, not decreasing the amount of content, but shortening them into smaller takes, because that's what millennials want. The huge increase in open education is also demanding badges. What can you get from open education? You take a course, so what? Nobody knows you took it unless you get some sort of indication that you've learned something from that open education. So open education is only half the value because the attestation of the competency or the learning has not been made unless it's made by somebody, and that somebody could do that should be universities in the form of badges. Let's talk, for instance, about a new technology, blockchain. How long would it take a university to get a degree approved for blockchain? My institution is 2.5 years from conception to actually offering. It's at least 2.5 years. It has to go through the academic senate. It's got to be approved by the government. There's all kinds of approval process. We cannot be nimble enough to meet the fast-moving needs of a fast-moving economy, if it takes us 2.5 years to get a product, an educational product out there. We have to be quicker than that, and we have to be more nimble, and we have to be more focused, and badges will help us do that. I talked about hiring practices. More and more employers are looking at digital evidence of competency. They're not willing to go through a huge resume and believe when somebody says, I know HTML, my director of IT in my unit says, I look at these programs and say, I know HTML. I get them in and interview them. They don't know HTML. They put it down. They pass by it slowly sometime, but they don't know HTML. If there was a badge on there that said UCI certifies that this person has HTML knowledge, that would mean something to employers. And employers are going to find that as I gave you an example earlier. There's a huge system developing around badges. There are international institutions that are forming consortium to establish standards, to recognize badges, to list them, to organize them, to consolidate them. So there's already an international movement behind the whole notion of what badges are and what good they can do. Here's an example of that. The credential finder, discover credentials, and there's an outfit in the United States called the Credential Registry, which is beginning to aggregate all these credentials, including digitized credentials. Here's another example. Let me say again that years ago, in 2000, we recognized at UCI that open education was going to be an important element of world higher education. The goal then was that everyone should be able to learn anything, anywhere, anytime, for free. That was our goal. Since 2000, we've seen a huge movement toward that goal. We may never get there, but we've seen a huge movement toward it. With MOOCs and free courses and so forth, we've begun moving toward it. The badge movement is going to be an important and imperative for higher education. We cannot ignore it. The society and our audience will demand it, and we have to be there leading it and being a part of it right from the beginning. I have further parts of this presentation, but I think I'm going to stop there, except that I missed one thing, and that is that these badges are easier to earn than degrees. When you say easy to earn, that doesn't sound quite academically correct. But in fact, when you can gain a competency in a very efficient manner that directly relates to the workforce and the job that you're applying for, that ease is really a big advantage to both the individual and society. And so we know that a competency in HTML is a lot less burdensome than a full degree from FJ or Strong or whatever, or UCI. So the fact that they're easier to gain and quicker to gain, and more relevant, is a huge advantage. I'll just finish quickly by saying that there are a lot of problems associated with badges. The criteria for issuing a badge has not been established. The badge shape and what's on it has not been established. Content, what goes on a badge, is not really clear sometimes. But we will overcome these difficulties very quickly, and each institution will be able to follow those things for themselves. So I'm going to end there, and hopefully, as I said, I maybe disturbed you a little bit, maybe made my point about how important this is going to be for the future, and I think it's going to be almost as important as open education was 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Thank you.
Over, professor.
What the meaning of ADC?
Querem passar para o português a pergunta depois a tradução? Professor?
I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that in the beginning.
Qual o significado de ADC? What's the meaning of ADC?
ADC means Alternative Digital Credentials.
Suponha que aluno regular da Universidade da Califórnia. No, I will translate to you.
Okay.
Suponha que aluno regular da Universidade da Califórnia esteja tomando curso de administração ou de computação. Ele pode obter também badge. Suppose a regular student of Irvine take a bachelor's in computer science. He also applies for a badge or not?
We're developing that system, yes. We're trying to get to the point where instead of just getting, like I showed you on that transcript, introduction to whatever it was, that actually we take each of those courses, we say when you graduate from this course, you will know HTML programming. You will know how to do the first element of cybersecurity investigation. You will, so that we actually do have skills that can be put on a resume. You can't put introduction to what was it? Introduction to artificial intelligence. You can't put that on a resume. You can say I passed introduction to artificial, but it doesn't tell you about anything about what you know about artificial intelligence. So what we will do is we'll take that course and we'll say, okay, what real skills do you have? And we'll put that on the resume instead of the introduction. Yeah.
Thank you, Gary. O nosso próximo painel será apresentado pelo professor Ph.D. Antônio Freitas, pró-reitor de ensino, pesquisa e pós-graduação da FGV. O professor Antônio Freitas é graduado em Engenharia Civil pela Escola Politécnica de Pernambuco. Gary? Alguém tem mais uma pergunta para o Gary? Teria? Tem mais o Freire uma pergunta? Acho que o Freire uma pergunta.
Thanks for the lecture, Professor Gary. My question goes around the issues with the ADC that you mentioned in the end of your presentation, right? When you get the digital certificate to a student, so that means that he can modularize his knowledge. I mean, I'm competent on coding HTML, doing something with artificial intelligence and things like that. So in the end, the student can be composing a curriculum, say, of competencies and showing that to the employer. So the effect of this, from the perspective of the university, is that we need to establish a new perspective on what are the things that we need to teach these people, because they have a different expectation. They want to learn about blockchain, how to apply, how this is going to make me, hireable by a bank. And so this, in your opinion, this is going to move the education institutions to a situation where we need to teach more tactical and operational stuff than the strategic things?
That's a very good question. The problem is that anytime you're talking about learning, you're talking about a learning context, all right? And modules do not necessarily add up to what you really want to teach people. You want to teach people not only how to use HTML, but how to use it with SQL, with other things and so forth. The sum of the parts do not add up to what you really want to give them as a course or a degree. So what I'm suggesting is that we do not give up our traditional way of putting stuff in and having people integrate those modules, but that we find out what skills we're actually giving that relate to the workplace and pull them out as byproducts of what we're doing, rather than turn ourselves into vocational or highly professional or technical operations. We need to give the students the whole look of things and pull out those things that are really necessary in the marketplace, but not change our whole mission because of it.
Ele teria alguma pergunta? Pode levantar a mão, quem tiver mais alguma pergunta. Pode perguntar. Tudo ok? Você fez?
Pode falar, ele coloca o foninho lá e traduz para ele.
Ok, então, por favor, seja bem objetivo com ele lá, porque esta experiência que o senhor apresenta lá nos Estados Unidos, para nós se torna desafio, como disseste, mas oportuno dentro do marketing. Porque unir a praticidade do estudante dentro das nossas realidades de busca de emprego ou de busca também de oportunidade, não é como os Estados Unidos, não é como lá. Aqui ainda para nós é um caminho lento. O distintivo é visto por nós como um símbolo dos times de futebol. O que fazer com isso?
Yes, it's very hard to find an analog. So, for instance, in the United States, when we say badges, we think about being in the Boy Scouts and getting a badge for being able to start a fire without a match. That's a badge. The terminology is very difficult. That's why I used alternative digital credentials, right? I used alternative digital credentials to be more politically correct in an academic setting. But then I immediately transferred my vocabulary to badges, which is something that people maybe can understand, even in the notion of soccer. Okay? Now, in soccer, you don't get a badge for doing anything. You want a badge on your jacket so you can show I'm associated with this particular soccer team. So we were talking about what words in Brazil, in Portuguese, should we use for the word badge, because it has a different connotation and different cultural meaning in Brazil. Something, stamp, could be a stamp. It's so hard to describe some new technology or new invention in terms of old conventional ways that our vocabulary rarely catches up with the concept that we want to actually explain. So I apologize for the politically incorrect nature of my talk, but that's the difficulty we have in describing something new.
Thank you. Mais alguma pergunta ao professor? A gente pode levantar a mão. Ok? Thank you, Gary.